Woody Wommack joined by Krysten Peek. Krysten, you left us at Rivals. You've moved up in the world to Yahoo Sports, where you are. What's your technical title?
NBA draft analyst, college basketball insider, kind of swing back and forth between those two things.
Well, so you're full-time draft right now since the season is sadly over. How have you managed to handle missing out on March Madness?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Uh, this college basketball season was already weak to begin with. And for someone that was, covering the NCAA tournament and also the NBA draft, I watched a lot of really bad basketball from November until March. And then it was like, okay, finally, like it's my time to shine. Nope. No tournament, no nothing. We don't know when the draft's going to be. We know now that there's probably not going to be a combine and there's no in-person workouts that can take place, but teams can talk to players, draft prospects up to 4 hours a week now. So, and what's funny is, I'm starting to talk to NBA teams a lot more because if it's a freshman, if it's a one and done player, the only thing that they have to go by now is their one college season, right? And so they're just trying to get as much background and everything as possible.
It seems like every year too, like a lot of people who fancy themselves, draft experts, like people who cover the NBA for most of the time and then dip into the draft, they watch the tournament and make like huge, like sweeping generalizations based on that. So you're way ahead of the curve, right? Since you were watching all this regular season basketball.
Right. And I mean, and for my time at Rivals, like I know most of these kids personally anyways, since I covered them as high schoolers. So I really wanted the tournament for them to have that platform so people could see what kind of players that they can be in. And honestly, like if you think back to last year's draft, we saw Jarrett Culver and DeAndre Hunter skyrocket in the draft because Texas Tech and Virginia made it to the Final Four. And so we don't have that. Like Udoka Azubuike, the center from Kansas, Devon Dotson, Kansas was going to they were going to roll. Nobody was beating Kansas. Like, let's be honest. But they didn't have that platform. So now like Udoka and Devon are still kind of in that end of first, early second draft picks.
Yeah. So you for sure had Kansas winning.
Yes, I did. Who did you have winning? I had Kansas playing Maryland because I just selfishly wanted a Udoka Azubuike versus Jalen Sticks-Smith matchup and Devon Dotson versus Anthony Cowan Jr. But I wanted to see that.
Well, I really wanted to watch. Obviously, I wanted to see Dayton to see how they were going to hold up, and to see if Obi like carry them all the way, because we've seen it happen before. I mean, guys have dragged their team to at least the Final Four, and I love Peyton Pritchard, so I wanted to see how he could do, like in his 9th year at Oregon, if he could bring them.
What do you tell me what you love about Peyton Pritchard? Like, please, long shooting or
no? Yeah, ultimate confidence. That's what I love about it. How could you not? Nothing was better than when he made that shot against Washington and what he was like.
I know.
This is my city.
He's like the Jimmer Fredette of. He would have been the Jimmer Fredette of college basketball in the tournament this year, I think.
Right, except I don't know. Jimmer's probably a way better shooter than him, right?
Yeah, but I mean, Peyton will let it. If there was like a 4-point line, like he would lead the country in 4 points. Like he just lets it fly.
So we'll talk about him later because he's on my list of people to ask you about. So based on what we know now, you mentioned that I think we saw the reporting recently that, okay, the teams can interview guys a certain number of hours per week. You said there's probably not going to be a combine. Are they going to have the draft like the NBA or like the NFL is doing in June, or especially because they said the season might not be completed until September? So how are they going to do that?
Right. So what I'm hearing from teams, because I've asked the same questions to a lot of different front offices and scouts that I talk to, but the problem is, and the reason why they can't do it in June, or they're planning probably not going to do it in June, is because there's trade implications and there's money tied to these players that if they're going to trade, but they wouldn't know that until the conclusion of the NBA season. So something needs to happen where the NBA is either just going to have a shortened season and they push the draft till like September or something. But there's a lot of money tied to free agency and different strategies that these teams want to do. And now they're just sitting in limbo, just like, well,
Right.
there's going to be a draft. We just don't know when.
Right. Because there is a ton of trades in there. Got like, I know sometimes guys will get traded, you know, say the draft is June 26th and then the league year ends at the end of June. And then guys are traded and then essentially like waived or bought out, you know, from like a partially guaranteed deal. So we'll probably be waiting, like you said, until they cancel the season or decide how they're going to play it. They can't have the draft then. That's what you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. It's such like an unprecedented time for everything. Like, you know, I think the NBA, like Adam Silver will watch how the NFL draft goes, and because they're losing a lot of money. The NBA as a league is losing a lot of money, like everybody is, you know, so it's like, well, then do we just keep the draft where it is? And do a virtual draft like the NFL so we can still make money, you know, off advertising and everything for that? I don't know.
I don't know. They might have to, like you said, they might just have to not have the same type of trades they normally have. But all right, let's look at the list. So we were going to do this a couple days ago, and then the list expanded with a bunch of different guys coming in. So let's talk about the number one pick, who we think, who you have. I think you still have Anthony Edwards at the top of your board.
Well, that's changing. So I have an updated mock. I don't know when it's going to go live. I've just been sitting on it. But yeah, it's all about fit, right? So I know you love Ant-Man, and I love him too. But if a team like the Warriors gets the number one pick, I see them like picking someone more like James Wiseman or Lamellar Ball or even Obi Toppin. Like I can't see them choosing Ant when they already have Clay and Steph, you know? So he could go number one, or he could go, I think, number one or number two. I don't think he'll drop below one or two.
Yeah, so as Krysten mentioned, I'm an Anthony Edwards homer because he goes to my gym here in Atlanta, but also he was a football prospect 2 or 3 years ago. So we could have talked him into playing football, but I guess he made the right decision. I don't know. I mean, one thing, so being around the basketball players in person, one thing that sticks out to me is how much skinnier they are, like in real life, than they look on TV. And that's the case for even guys that are in the NBA for 10 years, like Michael Beasley or somebody. Is like way skinnier than I would imagine. But Anthony Edwards is not. Anthony Edwards is built like a tank.
Built like a brick.
Yeah.
So when I went to see him, I did a story on him earlier this year, and I went down to Georgia, and you know, he like gives me a little side hug. And I could feel muscles in his back that I didn't even know people had. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, it's crazy.
Yeah, the last time I saw him in person was probably right before the season started. And he kind of gave me like a bro hug thing. And I like bounced backwards off of him. So he's interesting. You think he's more like so you think him and Clay have overlap? You think he's like a 2 in the NBA then?
Yeah. No, I mean, but NBA, they're not looking for a specific point guard, shooting guard. They want someone that can do it both in case injuries happen. You know, so we look at a player like Emmanuel Quickly. He was a point guard in high school and then was a shooting guard for 2 years at Kentucky. So teams kind of know that they can get more out of him, I guess.
Okay, so the other contenders for number one, you mentioned Wiseman. Talk about not having an evaluation. We barely got to see him play in college, and he's kind of been, other than his TikTok account, he's been off the radar. So do you think teams are going to be a little wary of him, especially if this was like a football player? There'd be all types of, the red flags with his recruitment, you know, but that's not something you hear about in basketball.
No, I think what people don't know is NBA teams packed that Memphis gym even before the season even started. Like I went to 2 practices and every NBA team was there, you know, so it's not like they haven't seen James. They saw him at McDonald's last year. They saw him at Hoop Summit. So it's not just the 3 games. But in terms of evaluation, there is a lot of question marks because the 3 games he played really well, but they weren't good teams. But I think he has enough. I really think he's a great shot blocker, rebounder. I think he would see early playing time. I mean, and you say he's kind of fallen off the radar, but he's in Miami. He's been working out since he hired his agent. So I don't know. I still like him as number one.
So so if you were picking regardless of need, he's the top guy on your big board then, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm in my mind, I'm thinking for the Warriors, but if it were, you know, like if the Atlanta Hawks had the number one pick, I think that they would take Ant-Man, you know, for that kind of feel good story. And the game that I was at, Trey Young was there. So they already know each other. There's that familiarity, and he would be an awesome 2 next to Trey.
Yeah, that would be and that city would be very excited if that happened. All right, yeah, I don't know. Did Wiseman play in the game against Peyton Pritchard? I forget.
I can't remember. I think he did. Yeah.
And Peyton won, if I remember right. So put that, keep that in mind for your evaluations. Okay, so we talked about him earlier, Obi Toppin. So this is a guy I kind of want to know because you mentioned we see these guys so much, especially you do coming up through high school. He went to Dayton, and he wasn't necessarily like somebody we're following since they're 14 or whatever. So,
yeah.
Tell me a little bit about his story, and could he be like Ja Morant, a guy who wasn't even rated on our site that ends up being like a borderline all-star right out of the gate?
No, 100%. Obi had a Anthony Davis like growth spurt where he grew 6 inches in 3 or 4 years. So he was a point guard in high school, then grew 6 inches, and now he's a forward. So he already has his shot. He has a great perimeter shot. He has great hands in transition, and he's super bouncy. Like he plays above the rim. This guy, Obi Toppin, had 3 of the best dunks the entire college basketball season in one game against George Washington. He had an East Bay dunk where he went through the legs. He had a poster dunk, and then like a 360. Like it was nothing. I was just
right. So obviously he's a tremendous athlete. What's the knock on him? Is it like outside shooting? Because it seems like to me, yeah, I think the Dayton Twitter account tagged us the other day with all these awards he's won. I mean, it seems like he would be a no-brainer top 3 pick, but I hear some people say he might slip maybe to the back half of the top 10.
Yeah, I don't know what the knock is on him. Maybe the fact that Dayton didn't really have great competition, and so it's hard to kind of rate that and as to how they're going to be in the NBA. I think the fact that he was a little inconsistent with his shooting, even though by the end of the season, he was knocking everything down. And then just his size, like he just needs to get more weight on him. He would be one of those guys you would see him and you'd be like, oh, he's definitely skinnier in person.
All right. And he's the one, talk about the guy. I feel like not having the tournament, he would be a guy that everybody would fall in love with, don't you think? Especially, you mentioned he's such a tremendous athlete, but he's fun to watch play too.
Oh yeah, he was the best college basketball player this entire year, for sure. I watched a lot of Dayton basketball, which is, like I told you, I watched a lot of bad basketball. But I love watching Obi play. I love his game.
All right, another potential candidate for number 1, Lamellar Ball, been around forever, which is crazy because I remember, I think that game when he scored 92 points, I think we had him ranked as a 5-star at that point, didn't we?
Yes. Yeah, we did. LaMelo, I mean, I went over to Australia before he came back and saw him play and wrote a story on him. Thankfully, I was there for his 2 triple-double games, which was fun. But he has grown up so much. Like, he was kind of a punk kid as a high schooler. And when I saw him in Australia, you know, he was like, KP, thanks so much for coming. He gave very concise answers. One thing I asked him, I was like, you've had one of the craziest road to the NBA where, you know, he reclassified as an 8th grader so he could play with his 2 older brothers at Chino Hills. Then his dad pulled him when he was 16 to go over and play against grown men in Lithuania. He came back for 1 year and played at Spire. So he played against high school kids again. And then he went to Australia, like, to play again against grown men. And he just shrugged his shoulders and he's like, well, to me, basketball is basketball. It's that simple. If you know how to play the game of basketball, you can play at any level and anywhere. And that's what I'm doing. I'm like, okay. But his biggest knock, I think, for LaMelo is his size. He's super skinny, but he is the tightest handle for anybody I've ever seen. He's 6'7", and he also has a pick and roll game. Lonzo didn't have that coming into the NBA. But his biggest knock is defensively. His on-ball defense is horrible.
That's just well, I guess Lonzo's a pretty good defender in the NBA, right? I don't know what the
Yeah.
advanced metrics say, but I think he has a reputation as being because of his length. So, do you think that's an effort? Do you think that's maybe an effort thing on LaMelo's part, or?
Maybe, but the thing is with his length, I was watching him. He challenges shots in the perimeter, but if it were like this game against RJ Hampton, who is also probably a first rounder, maybe lottery pick, was over there, but RJ could blow by him anytime he wanted to, and so I think that, like, I talked to one team and I said, "Would you guys take LaMelo Ball #1 overall?" And he said, "I think our head coach would kill us for doing that because he doesn't play defense."
Right. Well, sometimes guys can grow into that, but he's really, I think his physical transformation is incredible. Now, one of the reasons is because we were exposed to him so much so early. If he didn't have the family that he had, he might have been able to come up a little quieter, and he might have just grown and been an elite prospect regardless, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I think the whole, people are rolling their eyes that LaMelo is even in the talk to be a top 3, top 5 draft pick because they're afraid of the LeVar storm. But LeVar hasn't said anything. I had to reach out to him for the story because LaMelo said he thinks he's the #1 draft pick, and LeVar just said no comment. And when I asked LaMelo's manager, I was like, well, how's LeVar doing? And he just said he's sitting this one out. I'm like, whoa. Who got to him? Like, who is paying him to keep his mouth shut for LaMelo, for his sake?
Well, so, like, based on my limited interactions with the people in the Ball family orbit, and as someone who has a crazy parent himself, I can tell you that, like, when your parent is that crazy, you just sort of like ignore them most of the time. You're like, oh, that's just them acting like they act. And he seems pretty unflappable. I mean, LaMelo does. It seems like not a whole lot gets to him. And Lonzo's the same way. Lonzo's not, like, I think people interpreted that Lonzo was crazy because LeVar was doing all those interviews. I mean, there's never been any complaints about him in the NBA, no locker room stuff. He's never gotten in trouble off the court. And like you said, if anyone's going to be crazy, it would be LaMelo, having been yanked all across the world. But he seems, like you said, mature and almost more ready than some of these other guys who just played a year in college.
Yeah, and it's funny because LaMelo, he comes on the court, and his team, the Illawarra Hawks, which, by the way, he did a boss thing and bought the team he just played for, which is crazy. But he would walk out on the court, and he's just goofing around. And his first shot every time he touches the court is a 3, every single time. When I went to interview him, he said he had to make 100 threes before we could sit down. And so I waited, and it didn't take as long as I thought. I was like, oh my gosh, 100 threes. Like, how long is this going to take? And he just loves the game of basketball, and his teammates love him. Like, you would think being that good and being thrown into a team like the Illawarra Hawks, they're so bad, that you would kind of get really frustrated and roll your eyes and everything. But no, he just kind of embraced it. The team embraced him. They embraced the celebrityness that came with LaMelo, and yeah, now he's the team owner.
How much did we get the terms on that purchase? How much did the team cost?
I have no idea. I mean, just from being around the NBL, I mean, it's like a low budget college. That's how I would say. Like, the facilities aren't great, and the arenas they play in only hold about, I don't know, 8,000 to 10,000 people. So I don't know. I'll ask them one day.
But they love that. Australia loves the NBA and loves basketball. So.
Oh yeah, they were like, LaMelo is the greatest thing since sliced bread when he came over there. People like it was games were sold out every single night.
Well, so you mentioned when you went out there to see him, you also saw him play against RJ Hampton, who was another elite recruit who decided to go the international route instead of going to college. How did he do in his year there? And do you think he helped his draft position or hurt it based on where he would have been a year ago?
It's so weird, right? Because he's probably gonna go to Kansas, Memphis, or Texas Tech, and didn't go to Kansas because Devon Dotson elected to come back. Memphis took point guard, Boogie Ellis, who decommitted from Duke. And so this like international option just came up and they're like, all right, let's go. And so he was in New Zealand. He played for the NZ Breakers. But I don't know. I think he probably would have been better off playing in college just because they didn't utilize him the way he should have been utilized. But I think he's still going to be a first round draft pick, you know, but before the season even started, people were saying top 5. Now he's lottery, late lottery, maybe closer to the 20s. But yeah, great skilled player, great downhill game, killer crossover. His shot still needs improvement, but he's working on it. And yeah, really high character kid. So in these interviews, when teams are going to be able to talk to him for 4 hours, he's going to shine.
They have to talk. Wait, a team can talk to one guy for 4 hours? I thought they had 4 hours like for the week for everybody.
Oh, maybe. I just.
I don't know. No, I don't know for sure either. I'm just saying that's a long call, 4 hours, even for.
But it doesn't. I think it was 4 total hours, so you can break it up. But you're right. It probably like 4 hours for one kid doesn't really sound right. But yeah.
But he'll kill the interview process regardless.
He's going to kill the interview process. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about you. You have him under the international guys, but it doesn't seem like there is a Luka Doncic or somebody like that out there that's a surefire like contender for number 1. But who are the guys from overseas that you're familiar with that are going to be high picks?
So Denny Avdija out of Israel. He's the closest thing to Luka that we're going to get in this draft. Very skilled wing. You know, he doesn't play that much in the EuroLeague, but for the international team in Israel, they won the U19 Euro Cup and he was the MVP. And he was one of those things where when they won, he started like waving goodbye to the Spanish crowd. So he's kind of got like a little bit of swagger and chip on his shoulder. I was actually supposed to go to Israel around this time to do a story on him in Tel Aviv. And now instead, you know, I've been going back and forth with his agent, trying to get an interview set up so I can write a story on him. But he's top five draft pick. I think he would be a great fit at Cleveland.
Oh, okay. All right. People don't realize Israel does not win major basketball tournaments internationally. Like not even the Euro, nothing. For them to beat Spain, even at the U.
Right. 2 years in a row.
Right. That's huge. And if he's probably sounds like he's carrying the squad, right?
Yeah, 100%.
All right. So a few other guys who popped in recently who kind of I've wanted to ask about. Nico Mannion from Arizona, a guy who, if he showed up at LA Fitness, I wouldn't think he'd get picked like top 5 picks, but he's actually amazing. He just doesn't jump off the screen when you see him at first. Where do you slot him? You think he's like a 10 to 20 type guy? Or you think he can crack the top 10?
No, I think he's a 10 to 20. He didn't really play very well down the stretch in the Pac-12, so I think that hurt him a little bit. But let me tell you the moment that I became a Nico Mannion believer, okay? It was at an AAU event in Dallas, and it was coming down the wire to halftime. He was obviously going to take the last second shot. So he crosses over his defender, puts up a 3, swish. And then, you know, there was like 3 seconds left on the clock. He could have just like went back to his bench. No, he busted his ass, stole the inbounds, and then did a turnaround, like fadeaway 3-pointer in the corner while he's falling out of bounds. And it went in. So he had 6 points in 6 seconds. And I'm just like, I told him after the game, I said, I'm a believer in you now.
That's it. You're a fan. Who does he compare to though in the NBA? Like, what's the projection on him? Do you have anybody off the top of your head that?
No one off the top of my head. I mean, gosh, it's funny. I wrote an article where I actually had to do NBA comps on all these guys. Maybe I should pull it up and see who I said real quick.
Well, yeah, you looked at. I'm horrible at comps. I saw him play. So obviously, I saw him. He was at McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
I saw him there, and then I was watching Arizona play somebody, and I texted Bossy, and I was like, you know, why did we rank this kid so high? And then. And he had like some scoring outburst or something, and I was like, oh, that's why. Bossy's like, oh, his dad played in the NBA, or
yeah, his dad played 6 seasons in the NBA and then 4 years overseas. Nico was actually born in Italy. His mom's Italian. So, yeah.
So you keep pulling that up. I'll keep talking.
Okay.
The next guy I want to talk to about that after that is Cole Anthony, who hasn't declared yet, right? He put out an
Right.
announcement.
He's going to.
Right, but he put out an announcement to say he wasn't announcing. Wasn't that what?
Yeah.
Wasn't that what happened?
Yeah.
Do you got it? Do you have it?
Okay, back to Nico. And I remember writing this because I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I just said that there's flashes of Steve Nash. You see it,
Man.
and he's a little bit more like Derek Fisher is who I would compare.
Yeah, look, Derek Fisher would not be bad if you say you have like the 18th pick and you get a guy who's going to play for 15 years and be like a starter or whatever. That's a win. So all right, let's he's going to have to gain a lot of weight though to get to.
Yes.
He's definitely on the super skinny side. Let's get to Cole Anthony. He hasn't declared. He's the guy that like. Based on me following the NBA, that casual NBA writers and stuff throw out as the potential number one pick. It's Greg Anthony's son. He kind of has that. When I saw him at McDonald's, I was not a fan. Watching him practice, I was like, I wouldn't want to play with this guy.
Yeah.
And then he was hurt at North Carolina. So what's going on with his draft stock?
Okay, so Cole did something really pretty awesome that nobody expected him or even thought he would do. He had knee surgery and was out for 6 weeks. North Carolina had their worst season in Roy Williams history. And then Cole decides to come back and play. And he didn't play great down the stretch, but I think he did enough. And he showed that sort of character of, no, I'm going to play regardless. Like, I don't care if our team sucks. Like, I'm still going to hit the court. I'm still going to get better. And even in this quarantine state, because he's very active on Instagram and social media, but he's in the gym every single day, so he's not messing around. He's a hard worker. Like you said, he's got the pedigree from his dad. But yeah, just kind of runs his mouth a lot. So I think that kind of puts people off in terms of teammates and the locker room thing. But I think he could probably be between like the 10 and 20 range again, like Nico.
Yeah, I have a feeling someone will reach on him. Some GM will talk to Greg, and Greg will convince him to draft him. I would not pick him in the top 10. I'm just saying. I think though you could maybe he's mad if he doesn't go in the top 10, and kind of turns that into another chip on his shoulder. I just wonder, like, is he who do you have your comp article pulled up? Who did you?
Oh, I do.
Because I would say like Steve Francis would be my comparison.
I said Dennis Smith Jr. They have very similar names.
Yes, that's a terrible comp. I wouldn't want to be Dennis Smith Jr. No offense, Dennis. But he's bounced around already. He's a top 10 pick, and he's on his second team and might be on his third team, right?
Yeah. Is he still in New York?
I think so.
Okay, so he was with Dallas, and now he's just with New York.
He might be down the road again. So, all right, anybody else that I know we have a bunch more names on our list, but anybody that you think that we need to pay attention that's going to help himself during this weird evaluation period we're going to have?
Yeah, I think another couple names that everyone should kind of put on their radar if your team has a top 5, top 7 pick is Onyeka Okongwu. He's a center out of USC. And in his first game, he had 8 blocks, 8 of them. So he's a great shot blocker, a great rebounder, really high character type of kid. He didn't make the McDonald's All-American game last year, and that kind of motivated him to dominate, which he did in the Pac-12 this year. And then
I was going to say USC had a way better season than a lot of people expected, right? They would have probably made the tournament.
Yeah, 100%. And that started with Big O. That's what they call him. And then coming in next year, USC has Evan Mobley, who we had him at Rivals. We had him at number 1 for a while, but now he's, I think, 2 or 3 behind Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green. But so USC is going to be a really good team to watch. They're still on the board with another 5-star, Zaire Williams. And Josh Christopher just randomly announced that USC is back on his list, so USC could be really good the next couple of years. All
right. Who else? And then who? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your list.
And then the other 2 players I would say is Isaac Okoro. He is out of Auburn, a forward. That dude gets to the rim any chance he gets, and he just is a competitor. He just competes and competes. And I think teams saw enough of him today to really consider him, a top 5, top 7, 8 prospect. And then Tyrese Halliburton, out of Iowa State. Teams love this kid. Like, he is, his shooting percentage is insane. Let me just look it up. Like, I want to say he shot something like 60% from the field and 40% from 3.
Wow.
But yeah, Tyrese Halliburton.
So he might be a guy that the analytics people push on their scouting department a little more then, huh?
Yeah, he averaged 15.2 points per game, 6.9 assists per game. He had triple-double in early January, 22 points, 12 rebounds, and 10 assists.
Wow.
And he shot 50% from the field and 41% from 3.
This may shock you, but I didn't get a chance to catch a lot of Iowa State games this year. But based on those numbers, I'm taking him. That sounds like the old modern NBA wing that you want to have. So I like that a lot. So who else is there anybody else we're waiting on besides Cole Anthony? Who else are we waiting on to declare?
Josh Green out of Arizona. He's a first rounder for sure. Let me think.
Whatever happened to Precious? Is he not?
Oh, Precious Achiuwa. Yeah, we're still waiting on him from Memphis. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know you remember Precious from McDonald's. I mean, that kid when he was in high school never saw a shot he didn't like, and thankfully at Memphis, Mike Miller and Penny Hardaway kind of worked with him on his shot selection, and it worked. Once James Wiseman left, he became the guy, and I think he was averaging like a double-double the entire season. So he really grew a lot in just that 1 year at Memphis.
The last guy I wanted to ask about was the center at Washington. Has he announced yet? Was it Stewart?
Yeah. He just announced last week. Yeah, Isaiah Stewart. Another player that's just built like a brick. I don't know if you remember this at McDonald's, but when they were scrimmaging, he was chasing a ball out of bounds, and it was towards the towards the NBA scouts. And like, I've never seen grown men get up and move out of the way so fast because he was just coming straight for them.
Yeah, that's a scatter quickly situation. That's like when I'm at a football game and the guys hit the hash marks, I'm backpedaling. I'm not taking getting run over. So Krysten, before we wrap up, what are you doing to stay busy out there? I know you were out running around yesterday trying to get your exercise in, but how are you handling the old quarantine shelter-in-place situation?
I mean, like everyone else, I've watched Tiger King. I am staring at a puzzle that I probably won't ever finish, but trying to do new things. I have all of my. I went to the office and grabbed all of my hard drives, and I'm going to start going through old video and posting it and everything. So, just trying to stay busy. I'm probably going to be like, without even trying, I'm training for another marathon just to get out of the house as much as I can, or I'll walk to the grocery store that's like 3 miles away, But well, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm great. I'm gardening like crazy. I'm making all kinds of trades in the neighborhood, trading tomato plants for other plants, and because I grow everything from seed, so I'm in heaven here. I grew up on a Christmas tree farm in the middle of nowhere, so I'm used to the solo life as long as I can go outside. I have not been exercising as much as I should, though. I could assure you of that. Even though I cleaned the first weekend, I cleaned out my garage and set up my gym so I could work out. But
nice!
I found a dead rat in there, and that's affected my willingness to go in there and work out at like 7 in the morning. All right, Krysten. Well, people can follow you on Twitter. Is there an underscore in your handle?
No. I had to change it because I'm not at Rivals anymore. It's just at Krysten Peek.
Okay, that's better anyway. I wish I didn't have Rivals in mine. You mentioned the marathon. People don't know. People should know Krysten has run a marathon on every continent, including Antarctica. Correct?
Yes, and I just did the North Pole this past October because someone said to me, "Well, have you done the Grand Slam?" And I said, what's the Grand Slam? And they said, it's all 7 continents and the North Pole. And I said, there's no way that there's a pole at the North America. Like there's no way. And then they sent me the link and the race exists. And it was 10K on the ice sheet, like the actual North Pole, the ice cap. And then it was in Greenland. And then we ran the rest of the 20 miles back to town.
That's insane. Well, good thing you did that now. That might not be an option.
I know.
In a few years. So follow Krysten. She's going to have all types of NBA stuff, like she mentioned. You're out here. You're trying to get a hold of these guys across the world, trying to get them on Zoom. So thanks for hanging out with us, Krysten, and we'll follow you for all types of draft stuff. And I'm keep bothering you for old videos myself too.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Woody.